In yesterday's video, I told you all that I think it's time for us to start preparing for Bitcoin to lead the charge again. I said that the microcycle did seem as if it was ending and it was probably time for Bitcoin to really start to catch momentum again, break out of this consolidation that it's been within, and really start to tell the market where it's going for the next few weeks or possibly even the next few months. And in today's video, I'm going to tell you exactly how I'm preparing for it, how you can identify when that change is happening, and exactly some moves that you can be making to get ready for it. And so with that said, let's not waste any more time at all, and let's get straight into the video. So looking at Bitcoin here again, what we can see is that it has been rather sideways for the last 4 to 6 weeks. But throughout this sideways movement, something is pretty interesting has happened. We've been putting in these highs and these lows and these highs and these lows and these highs and these lows. And as we have been doing that, we have been putting in a beautiful triangular structure. Now, in general, these triangular structures are very bullish. Now, there are no guarantees and it easily could pull to the downside. But generally speaking, even if it does pull to the downside, overall, we do usually see a break to the upside eventually once we see structure like this form. But I'm not necessarily as worried about where I think that this is going. We'll talk about that towards the second half of the video. I want to almost talk a little bit more about what you can be on the lookout for and how you can take what happens to prepare your portfolio, if that makes sense. So, looking at Bitcoin here, as we do start to see this thing getting ready to move, I'm under the belief that we're not going to see Bitcoin really leading the cycle and leading the market until we do break out of this. You know, it does happen a lot of the times. We'll see Bitcoin absolutely rally to the upside, and then it kind of leaves the rest of the market behind, right? But then we see Bitcoin start to consolidate and go sideways. And as it's going sideways, that's when you're seeing altcoins jumping and launches jumping, pre-sales jumping. I mean, everything going crazy. And then they calm down, and then Bitcoin makes its next move. Now, if you don't think that's true, what I would like to do is I'm just going to point out what happened towards the top of the last bull market, right? Let's go back over here. So at the top of the last bull market, what happened? We saw Bitcoin lead the charge. I mean, going absolutely nuts. I mean, absolutely straight up, right? Then as this was happening, yes, many cryptos were also rallying, but not all of them were going parabolic. Not all of them were going parabolic. Most of them weren't until when? Until March, until April, until May. That's when we really started to see altcoins doing well. Now, when you cross-reference March, April, and May, right here, that's this. That is this. Right? You look at it from a more macro perspective, Bitcoin didn't really do that much throughout this entire 2021, but what did? Altcoins. 2021 was majoritively an altcoin season. And as you can see here, what happened was that Bitcoin rallied, went sideways. While it went sideways, altcoins rallied. And then once they calmed down, Bitcoin decided what the next move was, and that next move was downwards into the bear market. And so what we're seeing right now, in my opinion, is a little bit of a smaller version of that, in which we're seeing the altcoins have been going crazy, but it does seem as if it's time for Bitcoin to start to prepare for it to make its next move. Now, what's cool about these triangular structures is they're very easy to kind of assume what's going to happen. In the grand scheme of things, I think even if Bitcoin's price does break to the downside here, that we're going to find a higher low and we're going to look to continue upwards at some given point. Now, where is that higher low established? There's no way of telling. Could be 60,000, could be as low as 50,000. I'm not necessarily worried about that because, again, in the macro scheme of things, I do believe we will see something like this happen, in which we do put in the pullback, the higher low, establishment of support, continuation. Or we're going to see Bitcoin's price just break through the top side around the halving and then look to make a continuation to the upside. And so the beautiful part about what we're seeing right now is that in these situations in which Bitcoin does put in this consolidation area structure, we generally are going to see some type of price growth. It's just kind of determining whether it's going to be right now or whether it's going to be later. So the easiest way that I personally would look at that to determine whether it's going to be now or later that we're going to see Bitcoin start to really move this market upwards is determined on which side we break first, obviously. If Bitcoin's price is capable of breaking the top side of this resistance, I am under the belief that it is, of course, going to come back up and retest the double top. I think that is the case. We will have broken the 786 to 618 Fibonacci zone, which is where we did struggle to break right here, which obviously stopped us from hitting that previous all-time high right here. And I think, and of course, if we do get a break of the top side, we're looking for $70,700 to be cleared and held above. And if we can clear and hold above this level, again, yeah, I do think that not only would we likely come back to retest all-time high, it seems rather likely that we would get the break up towards $77,000 for your 1.272 Fibonacci extension. Now, sure, it may not be guaranteed, and we might get a breakout here, and then the price could come back and pull back to the downside. But as I mentioned before, I don't really care because the door is now open for that all-time high, and I do think we would inevitably and eventually get to that all-time high. So if you see Bitcoin's price break to the top side here, look for it to clear $70,700. If it clears $70,700 and is capable of holding some support up here, Likelihood is here at some given point, we're probably going to start to rally up towards 73 to 77K. And obviously that's bullish because that means the market's likely going to move up in response to Bitcoin. Now, if the market or if Bitcoin itself does not make that move, let's talk about a couple opportunities. Well, if Bitcoin's price does start to pull back in preparation of the halving, which is, within the realm of possibilities, what I would go ahead and say is that it's a two-step equation. Step number one is that we need to see if Bitcoin's price is going to be, of course, able to break the downside in general, right? Say it starts to pull back, but it holds some support here. It still could bounce to the upside. So I need to see that it's actually going to break to the downside. Now, if it breaks to the downside, what you need to understand is there's a $64,000 to $62,000 level right here that's going to hold as a massive point of support. This is the 618 to 786 Fibonacci zone to the downside. And generally, there are many times in which we'll see Bitcoin's price do something like this, hit this zone, and then bounce back to the upside. And so knowing that, I wouldn't even get very discouraged if Bitcoin's price does break to the downside, because it still could be a fake out and we still could get this move to the upside. Because again, remember, my thesis is that Bitcoin eventually is going to break to the upside and continue upwards. And it might just so happen here. And so step number two of this equation is that if we're actually going to see Bitcoin start pulling the market down, if we're actually going to see the market start to pull back, I'm not going to start thinking about that until $62.1 thousand is lost. Firstly, I need to see us lose support here. Secondly, I need to see us lose $62.1 thousand. And if we're capable of doing both of those things, then I will say, okay, Bitcoin's probably going to pull the market downward for a couple weeks, if not a couple months, before we do eventually try to make that another run to the upside. And so in response, what I would probably do is really start to focus in on Bitcoin. The likelihood is here in this situation in which we do lose 62.1 is that alts are going to get smashed in comparison to Bitcoin. Every 2-3% that Bitcoin goes down, we'll probably see alts go down 4 to 6%. And so what I would do throughout my DCAs is focus on Bitcoin and buy more Bitcoin than anything else while we are in that downtrend, because that's going to be what is outperforming the market most likely in a situation like that. In the reverse situation in which we do get a break to the upside, I actually would be starting to buy some more alts again, because the likelihood is here is that Bitcoin, if it does break upwards, is going to lead the market up. It's going to find a plateau very similar to what we saw right here, or maybe even a pullback. And in this moment in which it either does plateau or it does pull back, this is when alts are going to make a run again, and I want to get ahead of that run. So either way, I mean, I don't necessarily care what Bitcoin does here. I would prefer to see it go upwards, but even if it does pull back, I think again the long-term outlook here is that we're going to see something like this. We're either going to see something like this, right? Something like this, or I think we're going to see something like this. But either one gets us up here, and so I am still macro bullish, and I'm not very concerned about what happens in the short term. Just my approach is different. Approach number one is that I would just be buying altcoins in this situation because I think that they would be next up to run. In this situation, I would be buying more heavily on Bitcoin on the way down, expecting it to outperform the altcoins up until the point in which we do start to see it rally. So that's kind of the approach that I'm taking. That's the way that I'm preparing for it, and I hope that does make sense. You guys know I don't care, bro. I don't care to say I think Bitcoin's gonna go up, then it goes up. My whole goal here is to not be right. My whole goal is to be prepared. What you have to understand is that yes, Bitcoin is going to go up or Bitcoin is going to go down, and you can try to guess as much as you want and try to say you know what's going to happen as much as you want, but at the end of the day, anything can happen. And the best thing that you can do is prepare for any outcome and have a strategy in place to be executed under any circumstances, and that's how you consistently make money in this game, and that's why we're going to make money almost no matter what Bitcoin does here. So overall, I will continue to update you, but I want you to pay very close attention to how this structure gets interacted with. Do we break resistance? If so, I'm probably going heavy into altcoins. Do we break support here? If we break some support, understand this, Bitcoin's likely going to outperform the market for a while, and so that's where I would be focusing my attention. And like I said, I will continue to keep you updated as this does play out. All you need to do is make sure that you do subscribe to the channel and like this video if you did enjoy it, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace out, everybody.